Kevin Costner appeared to have the ideal union. 18 years with Christine Baumgartner, a huge Colorado ranch, and 3 lovely kids. In February 2023, however, everything was different. 2 months after discovering anything concealed in Kevin's vehicle, Christine filed for divorce. The number was not that of another woman. The receipts weren't from gambling. Something far worse came to light, exposing a secret Kevin had been keeping for years. What she found in the car seat explains why she refused to give an explanation in court and why she sought $248,000 in child support each month. The youngest of 3 sons, Kevin Costner was born in Linwood, California, on January 18, 1955. Even though one of his brothers died at birth, the grief lingered in the home like a silent shadow. Just to keep the lights on, his parents, William and Sharon, put in a lot of effort. William worked as a wire handler and gradually worked his way up to a utilities position, while Sharon was a welfare worker who assisted families. The family never had much money, and they always had to move whenever William's job required it. During the late 1950s and early 1960s, when turbulent streets and actual fights were common, Kevin was forced to move through neighborhoods like Compton. For the most of his early teens, he was barely 5 feet 2 inches, and bullies took notice. He felt as though he had to start over every time he transferred schools, never remaining long enough to establish roots. A mixture of German, Irish, Scottish, Welsh, and Cherokee ancestry, he was raised in a devoutly Baptist household but primarily carried the burden of instability. He felt invisible as he moved through the corridors of Cababrio Middle School and later Villa Park High, selecting choir and football because they provided a place to stand without sinking. He was 7 years old when he witnessed the 1962 conquest of the West. Additionally, he was struck more strongly by such expansive universes than by anything in his actual life. In his dream, he would ride away from Compton and into another life. He even witnessed actual fistfights that resembled movie scenes on his street. And without him ever mentioning it, those experiences began to mold the somber parts he would eventually play. He continued to feel as though he had to catch up to everyone by the time he got to Villa Park High School. 5 feet 2 inches, timid, and uncertain. He wrote little poems about feeling lost and kept them hidden while other children gained confidence. He continued to move from Compton to Orange County, then to Visalia and Ventura. In no place do I stay long enough to call it home. After playing baseball and marching in the band at Mount Whitney High, he returned to Villa Park and eventually earned his diploma in 1973. He never excelled academically or athletically, but he had a quiet perseverance, a blend of survival and inventiveness that no one around him completely understood. He continued on to California State University, Fullerton, where he chose marketing because it seemed secure. However, in 1975, he boarded a flight and found himself sitting next to Richard Burton, which completely transformed his life. Though he didn't say much, Burton's words were significant. He claimed to have something inside of Kevin that could be used on a screen. That one exchange opened a portal in Kevin's thoughts. He had no training at all, but he joined a small theater club. After balancing his studies and stage practice, he earned his business degree in 1978. Even though he was already preoccupied with acting, he got his first paid job in 1981 with Sizzle Beach USA, earning $250 for weeks of filming. He didn't spend much time on screen, but it was enough to convince him that if he managed to live long enough, he could remain in Hollywood. At the age of 23, he wed Cindy Silva, his college sweetheart, in 1978. Although the early years were difficult, their daughter Annie was born in 1984. Since acting wasn't his career, Kevin took on any small parts he could find, such as a truck driver in Night Shift, 1982. Backstage, he operated lights, assisted with sets, and did whatever else that generated revenue. Cindy carried more of the burden than she should have, and the money never went far enough. Kevin persisted, though. Every minor role helped him hone his skills, and every rejection strengthened his will. The time he chopped his hair for an audition was one of the many times he was turned down for the part. But he persisted. In films like Chasing Dreams, 1982, and Table for Five, 1983, he improvised and incorporated minor details that gave his characters a human feel, making them feel like miniature characters. People began to take notice of his everyman demeanor, acting as though he were someone you may actually know. Even if the roles were small, his honesty made him stand out. Then one of the most bizarre incidents in his early career occurred. Long before The Bodyguard came out in 1992, he tried out for the film in 1983. Something went awry during the audition, which featured a drowning scene. When an actress began to decline, Kevin had to step in and help her get out for good. "It nearly killed me." He learned that day how risky the business could be, but it also strengthened his resolve. Nothing could frighten him from pursuing the dream he had started. He founded a production firm with pals in 1985, having persevered through years of little roles and unsatisfactory auditions. Despite being impoverished, they were desperate for power. Kevin's goal was to create westerns that resembled the ones he grew up loving. He thought about the stories he would one day direct late at night. He persisted while others gave up around him because of his ambition and persistence. In 1987, everything shifted. Kevin Costner's career took off that year. It was The Untouchables first. In contrast to Robert De Niro's Al Capone, he portrayed Elliot Ness. Additionally, the $20 million budget for the movie gave Kevin a $3 million salary check. For someone so new, it was unprecedented. The sequence with the train explosion, where multiple extras were burned, was particularly risky. The lack of safety made Kevin angry, and he almost left the project. However, everything changed when the movie earned $16 million globally. All of a sudden, everyone knew who Kevin Costner was. In the same year, No Way Out was released. In the United States, the thriller made $35.5 million, or roughly $102 million now, at a cost of $15 million. Kevin's position at the top was cemented by the unexpected conclusion, which surprised the audience. The shot wasn't simple, though. Kevin had multiple run-ins with Gene Hackman. In order to prevent things from blowing out altogether, the director had to intervene and arbitrate their intense confrontations. Kevin scored 2 consecutive big smashes by the end of 1987, forcing Hollywood to take him seriously. Next was Bull Durham, 1988, in which Kevin portrayed Crash Davis. The film made $50.8 million while costing $8 million. His charisma on screen, particularly when he was opposite Susan Sarandon, helped to make the movie a classic. Audiences were unaware that many of Kevin's well-known quotes, such as the well-known "I believe in the soul" speech, were spontaneous. At last, he was demonstrating to the world his abilities as he followed his gut. Field of Dreams hit the scene in 1989. Everyone thought it was odd to construct a baseball pitch for ghosts. Kevin, however, thought it was possible. The film was $15 million. However, the studio refused to pay for reshoots, so Kevin had to pay for them himself when the conclusion didn't work. When the movie initially came out, it only had 22 theaters and made $531,346. But word got around quickly. It soon hit 84 million globally. He was transformed into something more than a celebrity by that movie. Thus, he became a representation of faith and hope. He was given a star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame that same year. His face was all over the place, cameras flashed, and people cheered. At home, however, the light was fading. He and Cindy's marriage was failing. Together, they produced 3 kids, but the costs of fame were too great for any of them to avoid. Distance and infidelity rumors proliferated. Their marriage ended in 1994, and Cindy was awarded one of the biggest settlements at the time, an estimated $80 million. As if he were carrying the entire decade on his shoulders, Kevin Costner entered the 1990s. It began in 1990 with Dances with Wolves, a movie he was so passionate about that he contributed $3 million of his personal funds to the $19 million budget. When he risked his career for a 3-hour western about a lonely Union lieutenant who befriended the Lakota Sioux, people labeled him insane. Nevertheless, he pressed onwards. Filming took place over 5 months on chilly South Dakota aircraft, where crew hands stiffened in the wind and cameras were frozen by blizzards. Costner engaged Sioux elders to oversee every aspect, including rights and language. This attention to detail was evident when the film was released. In 1991, it was nominated for 12 Oscars and took home 7. Only Orson Welles has ever won both Best Picture and Best Director for a first film, and Costner became the second person to do so. Hollywood's perception of native stories was altered by the $424 million global box office success. Costner's life was also altered by it, presenting him as the man who could accomplish anything. Others were carried along by that growing tsunami. Before the film, most people were still unaware of Graham Greene, who portrayed Kicking Bird. Greene's shot was given because Costner wanted authentic native acting. Despite the difficult journey, he received an Oscar nomination for his performance. Crew members were hurt when a real buffalo stampede went awry on site. The mayhem nearly prevented production and further depleted an already overstretched budget. Costner eschewed effects and trickery. He preferred to use actual buffalo when a setting called for them. With few supplies and frigid temperatures, the crew waited for the storms to pass and the animals to settle. Greene persisted, and his career took off when the movie went viral all over the world. Costner then immediately jumped into the role of Robin Hood in 1991. With its $48 million sword fight scene near the conclusion, Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves became a massive action movie. Costner was so committed to his archery training that, during a scene, an arrow flew off mark and struck a staff worker, injuring him and stopping production. Despite the tragedy and the negative reviews he received for his English accent, the film made over $390 million worldwide. As the Sheriff of Nottingham, Alan Rickman stole the show, and Costner solidified his position as the current leading man in Hollywood. Then, in 1991, he was cast as JFK, a role that required greater passion than anything he had ever done. Oliver Stone allowed the camera to roll as Costner dissected the Zapruder movie in a 15-minute courtroom tirade. That speech was used as an anchor in the film. The film sparked debate because it combined established facts regarding the Kennedy assassination with conjecture. Critics criticized it. Audiences flocked despite the dispute among historians. It garnered 8 Oscar nominations and $25 million. With fresh vitality, Costner's performance drew audiences into timeless questions. In the midst of this high, he made a decision that took everyone by surprise. In 1990, he rejected Pretty Woman. He refused, believing that the romantic comedy would put him in the incorrect frame of mind, and instead concentrated on Dancing with Wolves. That decision influenced his course. Although success boosted his self-esteem, it also fueled conflicts with studios. He started requesting more authority, insisting on final cuts and rewrites. Previously, producers had battled to collaborate with him, but their relationships were marred by the power conflicts. But he continued to get roles, gain momentum, and push himself to the edge of his abilities. Few performers ever achieved the heights of Costner's success by the end of 1992. The Bodyguard generated $16.6 million in its first weekend of release after opening in 117 theaters on November 25, 1992. In North America, it reached $121.9 million, while globally, it reached $401 million. Over 18 million copies of the soundtrack were sold, making it a huge success. Despite the circulating rumors about him and Whitney Houston, Costner remained committed to the threat choreography and physical training that helped to develop his persona. The movie cemented its position at the top of the world's film industry and earned 2 Oscar nominations for Best Original Song. Then A Perfect World. In one of his most poignant roles, Costner portrayed an escaped prisoner who develops a bond with a kidnapped boy in 1993. Under Clint Eastwood's direction, tensions existed despite their mutual regard. Costner pushed Eastwood hard for the writing to have more depth. Due to delays, certain parts were filmed using doubles. In addition to earning Costner a Golden Globe nomination, the movie made 104 million copies worldwide. It developed over time into a revered cult classic. 1994 saw the arrival of Wyatt Earp. It was the $72 million passion project of Costner. He demanded that there be a real mustache, actual settings, and real gun choreography. There were sequences in Dodge City that lasted more than 10 minutes. Critics moaned as the 3-hour running time went by. A $25 million loss resulted from audiences' difficulties as well. Costner even attempted, behind the scenes, to prevent the production of the competing movie Tombstone. Hollywood gossiped about ego after noticing the rivalry. Although the film was praised for its ambition years later, it was the start of a decline at the time. The Bodyguard added tension of its own. Rewrites and duets caused Costner and Whitney Houston to argue. Houston and the studio were irritated by Costner's modifications because, in his role as producer and star, he felt that the script needed more intense tension. Despite their frustrations, they produced sequences that are still memorable today. His reputation as a fierce control fighter, however, was further cemented by the arguments. It became heavy at home. His wife, Cindy, and their 3 kids, Lily, Annie, and Joe, were living in a mansion in Orange County by 1994. Externally, everything appeared flawless. The strain was steady. Inside, working from sets to meetings to late-night editing sessions, Costner frequently put in close to 100 hours each week. Cindy battled his absences and the idea that his profession took precedence over their family life. Cracks that would later enlarge were created as the pressure forced them farther apart. Critics began to murmur about overexposure at this point. He felt inevitable after making 3 big pictures in quick succession. Nobody anticipated that Waterworld, his next directing endeavor, would come to represent Hollywood excess. Costner continued to pursue lofty goals. He was determined to pursue his goals regardless of the consequences. The turning point was Waterworld in 1995. After sets in Hawaii were destroyed by hurricanes, the $100 million movie that was originally planned became a $175 million production. A total of $230 million was spent on marketing. The most costly film ever produced at the time. It was necessary to fly in a huge floating ATL that weighed over 1,000 tons piece by piece. Rumors of sabotage and jealousy were sparked by Costner's $250,000 daily salary. He and director Kevin Reynolds got into so many heated arguments that Reynolds left the film. Waterworld earned $264 million globally, but costs ate up the earnings, and the industry derided it as Kevin's Gate. Bridges were scorched by the stress, and Costner was worn out. Then, in 1997, came The Postman. In the $80 million movie, he served as director, producer, and star. On Christmas Day, it debuted just as the Titanic was packing every theater. In the US, The Postman made just $17.6 million, whereas globally, he made $27 million. Reviews were critical. Its duration of 177 minutes turned off viewers. Costner's decline since Wolves was evident in its box office failure. Tabloids grabbed on a different subject in the midst of this collapse. Actress Bridget Rooney briefly dated Costner. In November 1996, shortly after his divorce from Cindy was finalized, she gave birth to their daughter, Liam. Headlines were driven by the chronology, the age difference, and the secrecy. When a DNA test verified paternity in 2002, Costner finally acknowledged the child. Although he eventually established a trust fund, he stayed largely out of touch. His public image was further tarnished by the affair. Following Waterworld and The Postman, the studios took a back seat. He lost roles, such as Air Force One, which were given to Harrison Ford by the producers. Costner temporarily left the acting business to focus on environmental and polo issues while patiently waiting for the industry's ire to subside. With films like 13 Days in 2000, he gradually restored respect after making a comeback in 1996 with smaller ventures like Tin Cup. It would take years for him to fully recover, first with Hidden Figures in 2016 and then with Yellowstone's current triumph. In 2000, 13 Days allowed him to display a different side. Around the time of the Cuban Missile Crisis, he played Kenny O'Donnell. The tone of Kennedy's inner circle was captured in the movie by Costner studying genuine audio recordings and using actual White House transcripts from ex-COM meetings. The film earned $66 million globally. Strong enough to regain faith in his dramatic skills, but not enormous. He returned to the camera in 2003 with Open Range. On the Stoney Indian Reservation in Canada, he filmed with Robert Duvall. Actual herds of cattle thundered by the crew. On set, mud, storms, and erratic weather shaped each day. Costner demanded real grit, real dust, and real horses. Because of its emotional honesty, the film won $58 million and became a favorite among Western audiences. In The Upside of Anger, 2 years later, he changed to something lighter. He portrayed a former baseball star who became a radio host in 2005 and develops feelings for Joan Allen's character. Both performances received high marks from critics, yet no audiences showed up. With a $12 million budget, it earned $28.2 million globally. Nevertheless, the part aided Costner in his transition to more character-driven writing. His role as Jonathan Kent in the 2013 film Man of Steel provided him another well-liked moment as Hollywood evolved. One of the emotional pillars of the $668 million film was Costner's tornado sacrifice scene. He grounded the father-son relationship by drawing on his personal ranch life experiences. He was struck with an odd legal struggle at the same period. Stephen Baldwin filed a lawsuit against Costner in 2012, claiming that Costner had defrauded him of $13 million in a business transaction involving oil spill cleanup equipment developed following the Deepwater Horizon tragedy in 2010. Costner's reputation as a businessman suffered as a result of the exposure, but the case continued until a jury dismissed Baldwin's claim. After a brief separation the previous year, he married Christine Baumgartner in 2004, and by 2013, they were living a more sedate life together. Between working at Costner and spending time on their ranch, they created a family with 2 kids, Hayes in 2009 and Caden in 2007. In Batman v Superman, Kevin Costner appeared for just 2 minutes. However, the weight of a lifetime was carried in those 2 minutes. He appeared as Jonathan Kent, the quiet father who, long before capes and rescuing the world, influenced Superman's moral compass. On September 1, 2015, the scene was shot in Louisiana. Costner's voice remained serene long after the credits had rolled, despite the fact that it was completed in a single day. Ben Affleck's Batman stood in the same environment as Clark, but with a darker heart, as if he were whispering the movie's message into Clark's soul. Even after the film earned $874 million worldwide when it was released on March 23, 2016, people continued to discuss that little father-son encounter as though it were a secret reality concealed in a massive blockbuster. One of the most heartwarming scenes in superhero movies, according to critics. In interviews, Costner expressed his amazement at the profound impact of a little moment. The moment was kept short by the studios to maintain the emotional impact. And that understated decision influenced the story's overall tone. When Hatfields and McCoys debuted on television in 2012, Kevin Costner became the talk of the town once more. Millions of people watched every move as Devil Anse Hatfield threw him into muddy mountains and never-ending shooting. It became the most watched scripted drama on a dub-supported cable at the time after the first episode attracted 13.9 million people and the finale hit 14.3 million. At the age of 57, Costner continued to perform the majority of his own stunts, such as lengthy, violent combat scenes that required him to spend up to 12 hours a day in mud. NBC received around $8 million in ad revenue, while the production cost $20 million. But when it won 4 Emmys, including lead actor for Costner, the true reward was revealed. Members of the cast made jokes about dipping into mud holes in between takes. However, Costner eventually acknowledged that the physical cost was high. Nevertheless, the turnout and accolades made every exhausting minute worthwhile for both him and the History Channel, which had never seen anything like it before. Beginning in 2018, Yellowstone turned Costner's life around once more, making him the contemporary face of Western narrative. He performed his own horseback riding scenes at the age of 68 and transported John Dutton over Montana's limitless landscapes for 5 seasons. His salary increased to $1.3 million per episode as a result of the show's explosive growth, making season 5 alone worth $18.2 million. Then everything came crashing down. For the second half of season 5, he requested $12 million in 2023, but the studio resisted with suggestions for a pay cut and creative disputes. Tension increased until Costner threatened to file a lawsuit if the agreement was not fulfilled. After production stalled and the finale was postponed, this massive show abruptly broke in the midst of its triumph. Costner's salary had grown to be a major negotiating factor due to the $15 million budget per episode. Fans were shocked in 2024 when the contract expired. Every statistic and detail of the behind-the-scenes conflict was verified by trade magazines, making his departure one of the most significant television splits of the decade. Horizon, the dream he had carried since 1988, then materialized. He thought of a version that no studio wanted. not even when they made offers that fell short of his needs by roughly $5 million. Then he did the unimaginable. He mortgaged his land and spent $38 million out of his own pocket to help construct a $100 million, four-part epic. On May 19, 2024, the first chapter debuted at Cannes, and he bore the entire risk. Disappointment was severe when the domestic box office started at just $12 million. While some critics praised the film's emotional sweep, others said it had ambition but dragged at times. The latter two chapters are still underfunded, despite Warner Brothers releasing the first two. This instance was likened to Waterworld, the ghost that continually pursues Costner. But he is adamant that Horizon will go on. He promises to finish what he started, even if he has to carry it alone. Devin Labella, a stunt double, filed a lawsuit against Costner and his company in 2025, alleging that they forced her into an unscripted assault scene on May 2, 2023, while filming Horizon Chapter 2. There was no intimacy coordinator present, according to her. No warning, and that she felt helpless and embarrassed. Everything was refuted by Costner's team, who described the allegations as personal and untrue. In October 2025, the court decided not to dismiss the case and permitted it to proceed. Labella was not rehired after the union later confirmed that safety regulations had been violated. The set of Horizon became a battlefield of claims and denials as news outlets chased after every detail. The case is still pending, and Labella requested safety changes and a public apology. As dramatic has always been Costner's personal life. After getting married to Cindy Silva in 1978, he and her raised 3 kids together for 16 years, Annie in 1984, Lily in 1986, and Joe in 1988. Up until 1994, when there were rumors of an affair, their marriage appeared stable. It was even more explosive what followed. Bridget Rooney declared in 1996 that Costner was the father of her child, Liam. The DNA test confirmed what Costner initially denied. He had kept Liam a secret from Cindy until the test results were in, and the disclosure sparked a legal uproar. He avoided a protracted legal battle and the public display of his once quiet family image by paying a reported $15 million settlement. At a charity function in 1998, he met Christine Baumgartner. By 2002, they had briefly parted ways because he already had 4 children and she desired children. In 2004, they got back together and got married on his Aspen ranch. The 3 additional children they had were Hayden in 2007, Hayes in 2009, and Grace in 2010. From the outside, their ranch get-togethers and polo matches appeared to be peaceful. However, behind closed doors, the lengthy Yellowstone shoots caused intense stress. Later court records showed emotional distance and therapy sessions that money could not buy. Despite having a net worth of about $145 million, their differences continued to worsen. Although fans only knew about 5 of Costner's children for years, he eventually had 7. Before the DNA test made the truth public, Liam, who was born in 1996, was kept a secret. There were also rumors of a brief relationship with Naomi Arian in the 1990s. He also kept another matter secret for a long time. As his notoriety increased, he was able to conceal aspects of his personal life until legal proceedings and documentation exposed them. The complexity of celebrity households was made clear by these tales. The affluence that initially appeared to be a shield gradually revealed every aspect of his existence, highlighting the clash between privacy and legal realities. Baumgartner's collection of more than $100,000 worth of handbags was mentioned in court documents after his divorce. Everything they had bought together, including fancy mansions and ranch spending, was described in detail in the reports. Baumgartner said her spending was out of control and that he was not making a reasonable contribution. Their purchases were displayed in court filings, making the divorce a media spectacle. When a marriage fails, it serves as a reminder that even wealthy families can experience devastating dissolution. Baumgartner filed for divorce after 18 years of marriage on May 1, 2023, citing April 11 as the date of their separation, which caused a public uproar. The revelation that she had used joint funds to purchase a Porsche Cayenne valued at over $100,000 in February 2023 startled everyone. This was the first indication that Costner was getting ready for the divorce, according to her staff. She wouldn't give an explanation for her purchase. Furthermore, news organizations started investigating every aspect as soon as the filing was submitted to the court. The tiniest financial move appeared to be a component of a secret scheme. A private heartbreak became a national story because to it. All of this was brought to the public's attention by the child support dispute. Baumgartner wanted $248,000, but Costner gave $63.29 a month. Following a two-day hearing in September 2023, the court decided to accept Costner's offer, taking into account their financial situation as well as the children's needs. The prenup became the focal point of the argument. Baumgartner utilized it to retain some assets while Costner's attorneys attempted to argue that it was unfair. In September 2023, they struck a comprehensive settlement, and in February 2024, the divorce was formally finalized. The intricacies in the finances didn't stop there. According to court documents, Baumgartner charged $25,000 in legal fees and accepted $90,000 in cash advances on a joint card. According to Costner, she intentionally depleted joint accounts. Baumgartner refuted this claim. Nevertheless, the judge mandated that she reimburse $14.37 of his legal costs. The tabloids went crazy, making headlines out of every statistic. In late 2023, once everything had settled down, Costner briefly dated singer Jewel. Additionally, in January 2025, Baumgartner accepted a proposal from Josh Connor, a financier. Costner told reporters he had no intention of getting married again at a private moment on a Santa Barbara beach. Instead, he concentrated on rebuilding his life and his kids. Reporters observed how the concepts of Horizon, in which characters continue to go forward even after everything around them breaks, were reflected in this intimate chapter.